Welcome. This is a run through of a presentation that I gave recently that was focused on sustainable packaging 2025 to 2035. The focus is on what's happening in the next 10 years. We're looking at the real world questions that were raised by webinar attendees. We had 185 companies, 220 packaging professionals and sustainability professionals. And my goal in this presentation is to equip you with clarity, strategy, and actionable insights to lead through the changes ahead. So I'm going to answer the questions that were raised by people through showing you what's happening in the report. So let's begin. The report is a comprehensive 10-year strategic guide to the future of sustainable packaging. It's delivering market insights, material forecasts, regulatory intelligence, and commercial roadmaps through to 2035. So there is a chapter that covers entirely waste, anything to do with regulations, anything to do with recycling and infrastructure technology and developments, sustainability survey results, manufacturer behavior, consumer behavior, market dynamics, packaging technology, and forecasts. Many organizations want to know what the major forces are. They're going to be shaping packaging between 2025 and 2035. The report shows that material innovation, cost pressures, regulatory tightening, digitalization, and changing consumer expectations are all steps to reshape packaging. Materials are shifting toward monomaterials, recyclable flexible films, bio-based polymers. Costs are rising due to regulatory fees and sustainable material premiums, but efficiencies and scaling are driving costs down by about 2030. Regulatory momentum is moving forwards towards full recyclability, traceability, and mandatory reporting. And technology like smart labels, blockchain, and digital passports will enable real-world material recovery tracking. Brands are encouraged to proactively adapt across materials, compliance, and consumer engagement, and digital traceability. Those are the areas that will help future-proof portfolios. They're not going to get beyond any of this until the major obstacle is addressed. And the major obstacle is actually strategic misalignment. So the first step towards any sustainability journey has to be group buy-in and corporate buy-in so that the executive team, procurement, marketing, sustainability, packaging, operations are all on the same page. So cost. The perceived high cost of sustainable packaging compared to traditional options remains a major concern. The report demonstrates that recycling systems will break even within 5 to 7 years. Sustainable materials, although they have higher upfront costs, there are increasing economies of scale. By 2030, sustainable packaging will become cheaper than traditional in most sectors, particularly companies that have early investment in material optimization, eco-design, and circular system fit will unlock both short-term and long-term financial advantages. Material limitations. Some sustainable materials face technical performance issues, recyclability challenges, or consumer confusion. The solution is showing that emerging materials like mono-PE, bioplastics, paper composites are evolving to meet new performance and recovery standards. There is insight in the report that addresses recovery challenges for multi-layered and bio-based materials, and there's a highlight on scalability issues with compostable plastics and bio-based innovations. Consumers, there's research that reveal that consumers are confused about sustainable material claims and disposal, and the appendix has a break even by volume and material for traditional and alternative and recyclable packaging materials. So brands basically need to balance functionality, recyclability, and consumer clarity using validated materials that meet both real-world recovery system demands and consumer expectations. When it comes to infrastructure, many organizations are concerned that current recycling infrastructure is insufficient to support sustainable packaging goals. The solution in the report is that AI-driven material sorting and automation are improving material recovery efficiency. Investment in chemical recycling is enabling hard-to-recycle plastics for them to be reprocessed. And localized collection and closed-loop systems are expanding access to high-quality recycled material streams. Infrastructure gaps remain in many regions, and policy support is vital. So the strategic action is that companies that design packaging for real-world system compatibility, including material purity, easy separation, and labeling clarity, will improve recyclability rates, regulatory compliance, and also reduce their costs of non-compliance and waste. When it comes to regulatory complexity, rapid, diverse, and tightening regulatory frameworks are creating uncertainty and risk for a number of packaging strategies. The solution laid out in the report is that companies can use a blend of extended producer responsibility to shift costs onto the producers, mandatory recycled content targets, and material restrictions are accelerating, which is hampering what you can use to package your goods. Traceability and transparency are going to be king because requirements like the digital products passports are emerging across markets. Those that redesign for recyclability, material traceability, and minimal environmental impact will avoid costly retrofits later and position themselves as compliance leaders. Although consumers express high intention towards sustainable behavior, their actual purchasing and disposal choices often do not align with this. Now, in the report, what we focus on is both the intention action gap that exists, but also some of the nudges and behaviors that can be changed or amended in order to allow consumers to make a more instinctive, better choice. So price, convenience, and confusion about disposal are the major barriers for most consumers. They expect the brands to make the sustainable choices easy, clear, and affordable. Trust in environmental claims at this point is extremely fragile, so authenticity and transparency are essential. If you say your product is recyclable, it has to be recyclable in the local infrastructure, otherwise it is not recyclable. And with the incoming compliance for the green claims with European Union, you risk being fined 4% of your global revenues for any unsubstantiated claim. So companies that lead by design through creating packaging that is intuitive to dispose of, clearly labeled so that consumers understand it, and visibly sustainable, they will be the ones that will strengthen consumer loyalty and improve end-of-life outcomes. If it is easy and intuitive for consumers to put it into the correct waste stream, then it will raise the opportunity for the material to be reclaimed, reused, refilled, recycled. Packaging sustainability tends to be undermined when it comes to end-of-life pathways, which are unclear or ineffective. This can be because of consumer confusion, infrastructure gaps, or material design issues. For example, in the USA, there is a roughly 3/4 of material, about 76%, that can be recycled is not recycled because it's not able to reach the material recycling facility. So in the report, there's multiple strategies that are highlighted looking at how to improve material choices, so simpler, monomaterial packaging formats, which increase the likelihood of recyclability rates and quality. Closing the infrastructure technology gaps to make systems that are more effective at processing the materials that they are supposed to handle in their local environment. And then ensuring that consumers have better education and access. Education so they know what and how to dispose of the material properly, and then the infrastructure available to allow them to actually do that. The regulatory frameworks, mandatory labeling and harmonized recycling targets and EPR schemes are all being introduced to drive better end-of-life outcomes. When it comes to sustainable packaging, it requires the alignment of stakeholders across the entire value chain. So that's the brands, the converters, the retailers, recyclers, policymakers, and of course the consumers. There is a significant issue due to silos and lack of systemic coordination, which continues to slow progress and raise costs. That internal misalignment, which is a major barrier to sustainable progress, is replicated across the entire value chain. So if each one of the companies up and down the value chain has the issue that they are not internally aligned on sustainability, it makes it very hard for the entire supply chain to work as one. So cross-chain collaboration is absolutely fundamental in anybody who wants to succeed in sustainability in the next 10 years. Ideally, companies that want to lead should be looking to build pre-competitive alliances around new material standards, to engage in joint recycling pilots with supply chain partners, to share consumer-facing labeling and collection system improvements across brands and across competitors, and to support regulatory and infrastructure harmonization efforts, anything that will allow better reclaim, reuse, refill systems to be put into place. So key trends. When it comes to understanding the future of packaging, it isn't about a single innovation or policy. There are multiple seismic shifts happening at once across materials, regulations, technology, and consumer behavior. The solution outlined in the report is that there are 5 major trend categories that will define packaging through 2035. Circular economy dynamics, so brands need to redesign products and supply chains around circularity principles. That is going to be mandated in the next couple of years onwards. New bioplastics, recyclable flexible films, compostable coatings, advanced fiber-based solutions are all going to be scaling up under material innovation. Regulatory tightening, the frameworks like EU's PPWR, EPR schemes, and the UN Plastics Treaty are all set to be more formally adopted, implemented, and then will require compliance. Changing consumer and manufacturer behavior, consumer activism and buying patterns will drive circular innovation. Brands will need to make sure that they're aligning manufacturing and sourcing practices against this. And then there's going to be a major area for technology and digitalization. Blockchain, smart sensors, refill tracking, AI-driven material tracing, all of these are going to be fundamental enablers in this area. So success requires multi-factor readiness. No company can focus on only materials or only compliance. Companies must plan now for the intersection of all 5 of them. And these dynamics are not speculative. They're already happening, and they will accelerate towards 2035. Brands and suppliers who get ahead of them now will be securing the most largest competitive advantage. Material innovation, it's crucial, but companies face major challenges scaling new and sustainable packaging solutions. There's technical limitations of bioplastics and compostables, whether that's the durability, shelf life, recyclability. There's limited infrastructure for recycling and composting some of these, or most of these new materials. There's higher introduction costs and lower consumer familiarity with a lot of the novel formats. And there's supply chain risks and low manufacturing volumes. So when it comes to material innovation, the solution advanced by the report is in 5 key directions. Next generation recyclables, so improvements to flexible packaging recyclability, monomaterial formats. Advanced bioplastics, life cycle intelligence, so greater use of life cycle analysis tools to pick materials with the lowest footprint and resource costs. Regulatory push, there's going to be bans on anything from PFAS and plastic taxes, which will be pushing brands to shift. And so the strategic action is to develop material strategies that balance recyclability, compostability, emissions, cost, and regulatory fit. Material choice must now be evidence-driven. It cannot be marketing-driven. The regulatory environment, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's reshaping the future of packaging faster and more systemically than ever before. Key changes include the packaging and packaging waste regulation, the integration of digital product passports, the global rollout of 2-dimensional barcodes under Project Sunrise, and beyond Europe, in North America, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, there are also a number of tightening regulations. The shared focus is mainly on reducing single-use plastics, enforcing recyclability, and transitioning towards a circular economy. They're not limited to compliance topics alone. So the regulatory forces are woven throughout the evolution of future packaging systems. The report highlights how anticipated regulation will drive material selection, system design, and new recycling standards. It will also show how emerging regulations will influence material development and selection criteria for brands and suppliers. And there is a full set of strategic insights on navigating changing regulatory landscape. Achieving sustainable packaging by 2035 requires behavior change at every point of the value chain. So the brands, the suppliers, and the consumers. Today's behaviors are often misaligned with circular goals due to cost pressures, legacy systems, consumer habits, and limited infrastructure. So the report shows how behavioral change is evolving and how leaders can accelerate it. So corporate and manufacturer shifts, looking at how to embed sustainability into strategic planning. There is a focus on supply chain adaptation, consumer behavior transformation, and success overall depends on synchronized behavior change across brands, supply chains, and consumers. Brands that proactively redesign packaging with consumer alignment and circularity built in are going to gain the most trust, resilience, and market leadership. For the recycling infrastructure globally, which faces significant challenges, such as outdated technologies, inconsistent quality, and limited scalability to handle complex packaging formats, the absence of uniform recycling standards across regions also hampers both material recovery and the move towards circularity. So major innovation areas that are highlighted in the report, which can be critical drivers of improved recycling rates by 2035, advanced mechanical and chemical recycling, emerging technologies like AI and robotics that are delivering higher sorting efficiency, enzyme-based recycling, electrochemical recycling. There's also improvements in near-perfect sorting through invisible barcodes in the Holy Grail 2.0 initiative. There's blockchain traceability, and there's also drivers to expand recycling rates like technological advancements, regulatory pressure, corporate sustainability goals, and one of the largest ones of all is consumer demand. So the report projects that adoption of all of these innovations in a blended use could boost global plastic packaging recycling rates from 18% to 45% by 2035. So producers are increasingly being held accountable for the end-of-life management of packaging through EPR. The mandates shift the financial burden for waste management from governments to companies, and that impacts significantly packaging costs, material choices, and supply chain strategies. So the main solution is to expand the use of EPR, to lower EPR rates by aligning decisions with recyclability standards. So companies that transition early to recyclable, compostable, or reusable formats can benefit in a number of cases from reduced compliance costs and tax incentives. Bio-based and compostable plastics have variable EPR tax structures. Some regions are offering exemptions or reductions for the use of them. There's a cost comparison and return on investment table within the report that helps people to advance which material is best for which market. One of the other major areas is the transition towards reusable and refillable packaging models, which is going to be essential for sustainable packaging by 2035. It faces multiple real-world challenges. To scale reusable packaging systems, the industry must tackle infrastructure gaps, consumer behavior barriers, and supply chain integration challenges. Without this, reusable models may remain niche. There's supporting evidence from the report to this, which is reverse logistics infrastructure is severely lacking. So these are some of the challenges with refillable and reusable packaging. Behavioral changes and incentives like deposit return schemes are critical to consumer adoption. So there needs to be a strong collaboration between brands and retailers to support the integration of refill models at scale, and also to help educate consumers and provide them with access to these new streams so that they can understand how to use it and have access to a local area that will help them to scale up, refill, and reuse. Infrastructure scalability is a limiting factor, even when the materials are technically available. So companies like Loop and Algramo are driving forward refill models and scalable solutions. The companies that lead are going to form strategic partnerships across logistics, cleaning providers, retailers, and brands. Early adoption of reusable models will offer regulatory advantage and also reputational leadership. And consumer convenience must be at the center of design to drive adoption at a meaningful scale. So, where are we? What is the overall areas that we're looking at? Companies are under increasing pressure to provide traceability, recyclability, and product transparency, but traditional supply chains aren't designed for this level of visibility. So the problem is that we are needing more and more to have data and access to vast amounts of data. We don't currently have it in the old version of packaging. So the solution is emerging digital technologies, which are transforming packaging into a smart, traceable, and sustainable asset. So QR codes, smart labels, and full blockchain tracking allow the ability to digitize packaging and will become more and more essential because everyone's going to need to know in the next couple of years onwards where the product came from, what it's made of, everything to do with its footprint, all the way through to how to dispose of it properly. So, problems. The problems are cost barriers, material limitations, recycling gaps, regulatory complexity, consumer behavior misalignment, and circular economy challenges. Those are the main obstacles externally that companies are raising. Internally, the truth is that one of their biggest issues is internal misalignment. But in terms of solving the main stated issues, cost, strategic material choices today will reduce future costs. In terms of materials, new innovations will close the performance and cost gaps by about 2030 onwards. For infrastructure, stronger recycling technology, clearer design for recycling guidance is emerging and will influence the recycling rates and quality. Regulation, early alignment with global and circularity mandates is going to be critical. Consumer behavior, aligning design with real recycling behavior, not just intention, is going to be vital. It will also be vital to have clear, transparent communications to consumers and to provide them both with the infrastructure and the knowledge for everything. Why is the product sustainable? Why what it does is going to benefit them, where they dispose of it, and all of that information has to be verifiable. Circular models, so collaboration across brands, suppliers, governments is going to be the key to unlock the greatest growth in sustainable packaging leadership. All these topics are covered in detail throughout the full Future of Sustainable Packaging report. And we've only really scratched the surface of what's inside this report. If you'd like to access the full report, the report is available for £999 for a single license, £4,500 for a team of 10 license, or £7,500 for a corporate everybody in the company license. Otherwise, Paul Jenkins and I are happy to have a conversation about any specific challenges or areas that you would like to investigate more fully. Please just feel free to reach out to me at any point, and I'll be happy to go through and show you where in the report we can discuss and influence your needs. With that, I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I thank you very much.